was going to confirm that still.
I think so. Michael? Mr. Thompson? Ready to go?
Yeah, just 1 second.
A little more good faith, perhaps, as long as council makes it get direction on that.
In the event nothing happened, we fall back to the original recommendations.
Ready?
Part of it was because you'll have a tough time agreeing because we won't have that motion.
Flip back if you don't, then that's. Okay, good. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Do you want to take a walk? If you take a walk, you take care and go forward. Good morning, everybody. We have quorum, and I would like to call the 12th meeting of the Scarborough Community Council to order. Welcome to all members of the Community Council and, of course, the members of the public and the media. We acknowledge the lands that we're meeting is on the traditional territory of the nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and now is home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Williams Treaty signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. I understand for the clerk that we have two new items of business that, may I have a motion to add the two items of new business on the agenda? All in favor? They were distributed, I believe? Okay, well. Opposed? Carried. Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? If so, please indicate the item number and the nature of the interest. May I have a motion to confirm the minutes of the Scarborough Community Council of December 3rd, 2019? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Before we begin with the rundown of the agenda, I would like to ask everyone who's able to please stand to observe a moment of silence for the 63 Canadian lives lost in the plane crash overnight in Iran. Thank you. Let's proceed with the rundown of the agenda. Members, if you wish to hold an item, please state your name and say the hold. For these items with speakers, I will hold these items. SC.1, presentation of the Herb Carnegie story. I'd like to hold that. Hi, Ms. Carnegie, I know you're here, so we'll go down the agenda and then I'll call her up to make the presentation. SC 12.2, this is a tied item for 940. Request for fence exemption, 23 Copping Road. Councilor Ainsley. Okay, we'll go down the, you're holding it in your name? All right, thank you. SC 12.3, various properties, city-initiated technical amendments to various former City of Scarborough zoning bylaws, final report. This is a held item for 10 o'clock. SC 12.4, 1-70, Eglinton Square, 1431 and 1437 Victoria Park Avenue, 14, 18, 19, 22, 23, and 26 Engelhart Crescent, and 64 and 68 Harris Park Drive. Official plan amendment application, request for direction report. Councillor Crawford.
Sorry, I'll be
Thank
holding
you.
that item, Mr. Chair. I have a motion for that, or if Councillor Thompson will.
You holding it?
Okay, I could move the motion if we choose. We've just had a conversation with planning, so I don't mind
You wanna
moving
hold?
this motion. What's up to council? I can move it now, or we can circulate the motion. It's just to really have another conversation prior to city council on this item to see if there's a resolution can come into place.
Okay.
So I'm comfortable moving it. There's no discussion from my side of it or Michael's side of it. Councillor
Yeah,
Thompson.
you want to move it? Go ahead.
So in the event we can't come to any resolution prior to council, I'll be moving the recommendations. that are before. It's just giving us an.
You will be moving recommendations at council? Or do
Yeah.
you want it back here?
Well, so this more or less says, let's go back, have a conversation with the applicants. If you can come to a resolution prior to council, great. If you can't, then we'll be reverting back and I'll be moving.
Do you want to add in there that we're reverting back?
No,
If
no,
notice-
no.
Okay,
Well,
good.
but that's,
Okay.
just wanted to let
All right.
council know that that's the intent.
All those in favor? Sorry, questions of the mover? No. All those in favor? Opposed, carried. SC 12.5, 1966 to 2050 Eglinton Avenue East and 50 Thermos Road Official Plan Amendment Application, Request for Direction Report. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Similar to the motion that Council Crawford has just moved, I have a similar motion, which is to send this matter on to council without recommendation, and then to ensure that parties can discuss this matter leading up to the meeting on January 29th. If no resolution is arrived at, then the motions that are put forward by staff would be dealt with at council, and we will deal with the matter forthwith.
All those in favor? Opposed, carried. SC 12.6, 1880 to 1890 Eglinton Avenue West and 1523 to 1545 Victoria Park Avenue, Official Plan Amendment Applications, Request for Direction Report. Councillor Thompson.
Similar, Mr. Chair. I think there's a motion. Staff, is there a motion?
Do you have a motion?
Yeah.
This is similar to?
That's correct.
Okay.
All three
All
of
those,
those items.
all those in favor? Opposed, carried. SC 12.7, 25 Borough Drive Official Plan Amendments and Zoning Amendment Application Preliminary Report. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I can move the staff recommendation. The only thing I just want to make sure that staff will ensure that the Glen Andrews Community Association is also informed. And I don't think we need to do that in a motion, but I can just
Okay.
move this.
All those in favor? Opposed, carried. SC 12.8, 3250 Markham Road and 568 Passmore Avenue Zoning Amendment Applications Preliminary Report. On behalf of Councillor Lai, I am moving staff recommendations. Sorry, they're speakers, that's right. We have two speakers, but I believe they're taking their names off. Do I have Mike Duff and Glenn Petrosky?
Yeah, we can take our names off.
Okay, all right, thank you. Moving staff recommendations? All those in favor? Opposed, carried. SC 12.9, 10, 12, 16, 18, 20, and 22 Bluebird Place Part Lot Control Exemption Application, final report. Councilor McKelvey.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Opposed, carried. SC 12.10, Golden Mire Secondary Plan Study Proposal, Councilor Crawford and Councilor Thompson, and I believe we do have
Speakers.
speakers.
Yep.
All right, you want to hold that?
Yes.
Okay. SC 12.11, application to remove a private tree, 30 Ainsdale Road. Councilor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to defer this matter sine die. I think staff has a
Motion?
into it. And Mr. Chair, just so that I want to just thank the staff for their efforts in dealing with this particular matter and helping the applicant in terms of realizing how, in fact, he can actually deal with this particular matter, and thank the staff for saving another tree.
Questions? Oh, nope. All those in favor? Opposed, carried. SC 12.12, Always Stop Control Nancy Avenue and Bertha Avenue, and amendments for parking regulations. Councilor Crawford.
Yeah, I also have an amendment that I'd like to add to that I received from staff, and then I'll move the amendment, then the motion. This is just an addition they'd forgot to put on the original motion.
Questions? We're all good? All those in favor? Opposed, carried.
No, as amended, I believe?
As amended.
No, that was the amendment. You have to move the amendment then as amended, I believe. There's two.
All right, all those in favor of the amendment?
Of the item as amended.
And the item is amended?
Perfect.
Opposed, carried. SC 12.13, stopping prohibition, Kitson Drive. Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to defer this item to the next meeting. I just want to be able to have the residents who are impacted by this, I don't believe have been consulted, so I just want to make sure I have a conversation with them, then I'll bring it back.
Questions of the mover? All those in favor? Opposed, carried. SC 1214, always stop control review, Ivorwood Crescent and Dewey Drive. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to basically amend motion one where it says not authorize and to authorize all-way compulsory stop at the intersection of Ivorwood and Dewey Drive.
All those in favor? Opposed, carried.
Thank you.
SC 1215, school zone parking regulations, review Antrim Crescent. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move the staff recommendation, and big thanks to the staff members who have worked with the school and the community at large to come up with the recommendations that are here. We're hopeful that this will help to create a more safe environment for the children and parents and members of the community. So I'd like to move the recommendations that are here. And again, my great gratitude to the staff for the hard work, as well as to Judy Purpose from my office, who was working on the file. Thank you.
All those in favor? Opposed, carried. SC 1216, traffic control signal review, Lawrence Avenue East and Valparaiso Avenue. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. This is a happy day for this intersection, but a sad one as well, because someone lost their life there just before Christmas. And there has been a number of members of the public who had asked, particularly a doctor at the Scarborough General Hospital, but I won't mention her name at the moment because I did not seek her permission, but she was very active in terms of ensuring that we put in a traffic signal here, and I'm very delighted that the staff have seen fit that this is necessary, and the recommendation here speaks to that, and I want to thank them, and I'm hoping that no other persons will be killed in the community. Over the last year, I think I've had almost 5 people who've been killed at major areas in the ward, and I think it's very, very sad that these things happen, and we're hoping that the installation of this signal will help to mitigate, eliminate, and or reduce any of these types of occurrences from happening in our community, because we need to ensure that the community is safe for all. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank the General Manager of Transportation, Ms. Barbara Gray, who's here with us, and Mr. Brown as well, and the whole team in the traffic management and in that department. I want to thank them very much for the great work and the recommendation that's here in front of us today.
All those in favor? Opposed, carried. SC 1217, U-turn prohibition, Marcus Boulevard between Midland Avenue and Cicerella Crescent, East intersection. Councillor Thompson.
Again, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move the recommendation that is presented by staff, and just to reiterate the fact that ongoing we have such challenges with respect to people being affected by traffic occurrences and incidents and so on. They're not accidents, they are occurrences, incidents, and I think paying more attention, particularly by drivers, can help. And of course, we want to make sure that people who are using the roadway as well, pedestrians and residents, are also mindful of protecting their safety. It's very sad that we have to deal with many of these issues, but I want to thank the staff again for their great work on bringing these items forward. Thank you.
All those in favor? Opposed, carried. SC 1218, left turn prohibition, Middlefield Road at point approximately 92 meters south of Steeles Avenue. Councillor Lai, and I've been asked by the councillor to move staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed, carried. SC 1219, Always Stop Control Review, Dale Avenue and Cromwell Road, Councillor Ainsley, and I do believe that we do have a speaker. You want to hold? You want to hold? Where's the speaker? Yeah, there's a speaker. So you're holding? SC 1220, compulsory stop, Botany Hill Road area, and there's a speaker. All right, I'll hold that. SC 12.21, Always Stop Control Review, Golders Green Avenue and White Rock Drive. Councillor McGelvey.
Thank you. I'd like to move staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Opposed, carried. SC 12.22, Proposed U-Turn Prohibition, Shepherd Avenue East. Councillor McKelvey.
Thank you. I'd like to move staff recommendations.
All those in favor? Opposed, carried.
Mr. Chair, just, I wonder if I can just reopen 12.5. I'd like to withdraw the motion that I've added to 12.5, just recognizing that I was, it's not necessary, so I'd like to move the staff recommendations.
You want to move staff recommendations?
With 12.5. So
Right, and I have
reopen and withdraw. Motion.
Do I have, all those in favor of reopening? Opposed, carried. Councillor, you want to move?
Move
staff-
the staff recommendations,
Okay.
Chair. and
All
thank
those in
staff.
favor of moving staff recommendations? Opposed, carried.
Thank you.
All right. SC point one. This morning's speaker is the descendant of two Black Canadian families who immigrated to Canada in 1912, 1913, and settled in Toronto. She's the daughter of Herbert H. Carnegie, a hockey player in the 1940s and 50s, where white players dominated the game of hockey. She's the co-founder of the Herbert H. Carnegie Future Aces Foundation and was established in 1987, the recipient of numerous educational, leadership, and community services award, including the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal. In 2016, her story was profiled in a book and at an event recognized the inaugural introduction of 100 accomplished Black Canadian women. The new edition of the autobiography, A Fly in a Pail of Milk, the Herb Carnegie story, with part 2, Lessons Passed on from Father to Daughter, was released in November 2019 to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Dr. Carnegie's birth. I'm honored to introduce Mrs. Bernice Carnegie, daughter of Herbert H. Carnegie, who will be giving us a presentation. Welcome, Welcome, Bernice. Will you come down, please? I do have to say she's a resident of mine.
Good morning, everybody. I am delighted to be here this morning, and thank you very much to the chair, who I am a resident in his ward, and he was the one who presented me with the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Medal a number of years ago at a local high school. So thank you very much, Jim, for that. I'm not quite sure how much time I have. Can you please clarify that for me? 5 minutes? Okay, so I have 5 minutes to tell you 100 years of history. And I am really very connected to my father, Herb Carnegie. I worked with him for 30 years. And his story is the typical Canadian story of the guy who wanted to be a hockey player. And he was raised in North York when North York was mostly all farm fields. And he played on the ponds in North York, and that's how he started his hockey career. Well, he ended up being exceptional. He made hockey history. 3 black men played on an all-black line. They were called Les Noirs, and many other names. From the media standpoint, the articles were amazing. They read, the Brown Bombers, the Dark Destroyers, the Ink Spots, the Dusky Raiders. And when I finally was old enough to actually read the fine print. I found out that my father and his two cohorts, who were only together for 4 years, although my father played hockey for 17 years of his life, brought in fans from everywhere. They were such a phenomenon. Well, that was the beginning of my dad's life. And they say he was good enough to have played in the NHL. But as he said, the only black thing on the ice was the puck. And he is now touted as the best black hockey player in the 30s and 40s who never made it to the NHL. So, it's a sad story, and it's a happy story, because what he learned as a hockey player took him through his life. And when I was cleaning up, because I have thousands of articles and thousands of pictures, I came across an article last night, and I'm going to just show it at the back. You'll see that it's all tarnished and brown. And it said, "Self-image, key, Carnegie." And that's exactly who my father was, the man who had a strong self-confidence. He had to go through many, many barriers in our wonderful country of Canada, but self-image was the important thing that carried him through, and persistence to be the best of who he could be. And so he didn't just sit on it, he took it to the community. And my father did some amazing things. So I'm going to quickly tell you a few of those things so that you will understand the gravity of how this one black man, raised in an all-white community in North York, actually came to have such an amazing and successful life. So I'm going to say, did you know that Herb Carnegie established the first registered hockey school in Canada? And he called it Future Aces. Did you know my father was an inventor? He created an instructional board, which is the prototype for the whiteboards that you have now. He was an inventor. He created 2 games, a hockey game and a football game. He founded the Herbert H. Carnegie Future Aces Foundation in 1987, and I was part of that. I signed on the dotted line with him, so I'm aging myself a little bit here. And that organization has affected 100,000 students a year for almost 30 years. And we have given out $860,000 in scholarships to young people all across Canada who have shown themselves to be great citizens. He wrote the book, A Fly in a Pail of Milk. And this is the 2nd edition of A Fly in a Pail of Milk. I got to write part 2, Lessons Passed On from Father to Daughter. My father was inducted into 13 Halls of Fame. He was honored by community and country with 8 medals, including the Order of Canada. He was recognized with an arena over there in Finch Avenue, the Herbert H. Carnegie Centennial Center. He mentored for 50 years. He mentored young people for 50 years, and he now has a school named in his honor that opened in 2008. My father won 24 amateur golf tournaments. He was appointed honorary chief of police to York Region. He was honored by York University with an honorary Doctor of Laws degree. He was a pace setter in business, and 24 years in a row, he led his work in Investors Group by being in the Millionaires Club 23 years, and was the first person to do that, and the first black person that they ever hired as a consultant. My father has so many wonderful things that happened to him, but he's also a real-life comic book character in 2 special issues of Spider-Man, a drug prevention project that was initiated by Canada's chiefs of police back in 1990. So I can't help but be proud of my father. But I'm going to read you this. It is really hard to aspire to be what you cannot see. And that's the problem we have with so many of our black youth and other youth of color now. Where do they see themselves? Where do we see our leaders? Everybody else is making decisions for us. And why do we have Black History Month? We wouldn't need it. We would not need it if we had been included in the curriculum. So when I wrote this book, I went back and I asked 5 generations of my family, did they actually have any Black history as part of their curriculum in school? My grandparents, my parents, me, my children, my grandchildren, not one of us had any history on Black people in our Canadian curriculum. So I have a great story. It's a great story of inspiration, but it's also a story that says, we've been left out. You've left us out, but you are the counselors that can move forward, that can make a difference for a whole generation and generations to come of young people who have been left out of the curriculum. I'm sorry that I'm emotional all of a sudden. I didn't think I would be. But last week, my granddaughter was playing hockey. And she was called a nigger last week. This is 80 years after my father and his great-grandchild is still being called names. We need your help. We need those of you who care to include us so that we can be seen. Some of us make it, and my father made it against all odds. I made it against all odds. I was the only Black student in my classes, just like my father in North York, from kindergarten through high school until I got to college. One person can't do it. Now, my father didn't do all those wonderful things by himself. There were so many wonderful people in the white community that did it to help him. And I thank those of you who did help. And I also thank those of you who had great ideas. And one of the people here that has had a great idea was Michael Thompson. And he really contributed to our initiative, Future Aces, the creed that my father started that starts with, I will endeavor to be the best person that I can be. And every sentence in his creed speaks to what he was going to do because he knew he couldn't count on other people to do it. So Michael helped us with a project back in the early 200s. It was called Future Aces Positive Ticketing. And it was a pilot project in Toronto that he brought. And Michael, that project ended up going into York Region Police, Durham Region Police, and I've spoken to literally 30,000 students who were connected with the police in a positive way because of that initiative that you brought. You are in the book. You're in the book. And I also want to thank Jim, who has been a counselor in the region in which I am from, Agincourt, where I've lived for the last 33 years, who has kept in touch with our groups. That's what we need. We need people to connect. We need people to believe in each other. We need people to care enough that you're going to step out of the box the way my father stepped out of the box to help thousands and thousands of young people feel better about who they are. And that may help us end some of the problems. So I have books for 2 very special people.
We do have some friendly questions, Mr. Carnegie. Councilor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, through you to Bernice. So Bernice, you're asking us to help because, as you pointed out, 80 years later, the N-word is still fresh and vibrant in our society and beyond. What do you want us to do as a group and collectively as a city?
We need to talk. We definitely need these conversations in our schools with our young people. And when we don't have any representation that speaks to the issues that have been going on in this country from its inception, we can't get anywhere. And now we have all of these problems with especially our black students keep coming up and how they're being treated. And since I have been attending meetings with black teachers and principals and finding out that it's worse. It's worse than it was when I was a kid, because I was the only kid. Nobody's afraid of one little black girl at a school. But now we have numbers that for some reason make people fear, or they don't understand, or we're not trying to understand. We need to talk about it. I'm hoping that you will help me promote the book, my book, because I think it's a conversation piece that speaks to 100 years of a black family having come to Canada in 1912, two black families who came in 1912 and 1913, and to look at some of the issues and to let the kids talk it through. We need to be talking this through, but if somebody doesn't start this, if somebody doesn't initiate this, we're going to be talking about this next year and next year and next year. So how could it be that our family has talked about this for 5 generations, and now my daughter just left me yesterday to tell me that this happened to her daughter?
Right. Have you reached out to the library board or the library in order to see whether or not your book could be acquired by them to ensure that it gets into the system, not dissimilar to Denham Jolly's book, who is now actually in the system? They had one initially. When I spoke to the chief librarian, we talked about it, and she said they had a waiting list, but they only had one book in the entire system. They have actually expanded that. I'm just wondering if you had had a chance.
Are you talking about libraries?
The libraries, yes.
Well,
because they do buy them as well to use.
Yes. Okay. So are we talking about school libraries, or are we talking about
I would
the
say all
public
libraries,
library?
but the City of Toronto's library specifically,
Okay.
and then the school board, whether or not you've spoken to them about that.
I have approached the Toronto Public Library, and they immediately accepted my book as one of the books to put in their libraries. I did hear from a friend who said, well, I'm 4th on the waiting list. So obviously they need more.
Right.
More books out there, and I do have some engagements where I'll be speaking at libraries over the next couple of months.
Okay.
So I have taken that step. I would like to actually go a little farther. I want the education system. You know what? We shouldn't have to have Black History Month.
Okay.
We have many, many different nationalities in our country.
And just one final question. We had worked 15 years ago on the positive ticketing, which is an idea I brought back from meeting with Ward Clampton, who was an RCMP officer, and I liked the idea. And initially, when we tried to launch it, there were a number of people, particularly on the police service board, and some members of the policing community who said that wasn't something that we should be doing and so on. And I think back in the day, some of the political leaders felt that it wasn't necessary. You're telling us this morning, and I had no idea, that it has reached beyond 30,000 people who've actually been involved?
Yes.
Wow, thank you. And
Because what happened is that those officers were at presentations that I was doing for schools. So I got to speak to whole student assemblies
Right.
Throughout whole communities. And the police were there with me, and we were interacting with the students,
Right.
and it was positive.
Right. And maybe just, if you could, maybe just expand to explain exactly what it is, and I'll just give you the example. When we introduced it here at Bendale and other schools, young people were clamoring to their teachers, wanting to get engaged. It helped them to develop a sense of responsibility and so on. And all the ticket was, it was a ticket thing. You still have a copy of it, yes, good. And we actually got from businesses such as Pizza, some of the movie theaters, some of the basketball. We had tickets from the Raptors and others, so that the teachers and police officers could actually give out tickets to young people when they were doing really cool things. Is that what it was all about?
Well, that's true, and in the Toronto area, in the Greater Toronto area, because we have approximately 200 schools at any given time that are actively using Future ACES initiatives. It's called being caught in the act of demonstrating a positive attitude, using your ability to help society, taking action with integrity, achieving your goals with sincere effort, acting with courage, being confident without being arrogant, and the list goes on
Sure.
in the values of ACES, and schools are still using these.
Fantastic.
So we're not there, but the schools continue to use them.
Okay, thank you very much. Those are all my questions, Mrs. Carnegie. Thank you for your great work.
Thank you, Councillor. I do have one question. Have you contacted the current MP, your current MP, to make sure that this book ends up in the House of Commons library?
I have not.
Let's work on that.
Okay,
Thank you, ma'am.
thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I want to again thank Ms. Carnegie for being here. I met her dad, and I knew her dad, and he was a fantastic person, as you've heard from his daughter, Ms. Carnegie. But I don't think you have to go far in terms of speaking to people in this city about the greatest hockey player that missed the NHL. And in fact, when I went a couple days ago to welcome the Team Canada junior team, and Akil Thomas, who was a family friend I know, played with my son at a very elite level, and from Scarborough, and he and Liam Foodie, who is also from Scarborough, so very proud to see them mention Scarborough. But I think really the point I want to make is that hockey is, if you will, the great sport of this country. And it should include everybody. And those who want to strive and achieve should be given the opportunity and so on, because it's used as an exchange to develop good citizenry and good leaders and so on. And your dad took that, and although he was maligned throughout his entire career, I learned something new. I'd never heard of the ink spots before. And I understand what that means, but I'd never heard of that terminology, so this is something new, and I hope not to use it other than when I'm writing on a piece of paper and there's an ink spot on the paper.
The Ink Spots was a singing group back in the early days.
Oh, cool.
And so, yeah.
But it also means some other things as well, I think. But in any event, though, your family, and we have descendants of your family who live right in this ward, who are in my constituents as well, so they're right out throughout the GTA and beyond. And so you're saying to us today, in as much as we have come so far, we have not really achieved this level of, if you will, of equality and inclusion We may talk about equality, but inclusion is a significant deficit that is affecting the Black community and other communities in this city and beyond. And until we arrive at a level where inclusion is also part of the narrative of the discussion, we will never really arrive or achieve. That's part of what you're saying to us today. And I think we will all hopefully do our bit to make sure that we can address these particular issues. And we are all people under the eyes of God and whoever one subscribed to in terms of faith and so on. And I think that the period of time has arrived where we really need to get beyond this notion that because of the color of one's skin or the hue of one's skin, you can determine what that person is or who they are just by looking at them. And then creating this narrative that those individuals who should be second class or obviously be viewed in a very pejorative sense is not something that we want to support or endorse, and we have to get beyond it. And there's so much more things for us to do, and I'm glad that you're still able to do it on behalf of your father and his legacy and so on, and I'm looking forward to continuing working with you and others to ensure that we can reach a just society, which is what is the ultimate goal and objective. And it doesn't matter who you are, where you've come from. I think it's important that we're treated with fairness and with respect and with dignity. You know, the color and content and conversation is one where we need to ensure that we can respect people for being who they are, not who we think they are based on the way that they look or our perception of a specific race and or ethnicity of people and so on. So it's extremely important for us to hear your message today. So thank you very much for being here and conveying it to us today. Thank you.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Bernice, on behalf of all of us, thank you for coming and making your presentation. Much appreciated. Thank you very much. Moving right along, SC 12.2, request for fence exemptions, 940. We have speakers. Can I ask Sean Beckman, Tracy Bachman, and Ralph Pastemis, if they're here, to please come down in that order. You'll be given an opportunity to make presentation for 5 minutes, and then we'll ask questions. So, Sean. Sir, whenever you're ready, you got 5 minutes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm not sure exactly what I should be doing. I guess I'm just explaining my case for not having the fence exempted to be higher than the legal height. We do gardening on our side. The fence obstructs the sun on the side. I don't feel that it's necessary to go past. If it's for privacy reasons, the height that it stands at now, we cannot see over. So I don't see it being for any privacy reasons. And that's pretty much it. If I just ask that whatever is done to the fence by our neighbors, they're considerate of how it looks on our end. They've been doing stuff that's not very visually appealing on our side, like painting their side and the drippings come over to the other side and just stuff of that nature. They had put up a lattice on top of a lattice. It's just, I have guests coming over all the other sides of the fence. I've put up nice fences on this side. It's not visually appealing at all. I don't see the necessity to go any higher than the legal amount, the legal height. That's pretty much it.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. Any questions of the deputant? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Tracy Beckman?
Good morning.
Whenever you're ready, 5 minutes.
Good morning. I'm just going to add to that, again, with the drippings, if they are going to modify the fence, that they be considerate of our side and not have the drippings come onto our side. And again, the height does obstruct. I do vegetable gardening, and they had put up some sort of a lattice on their side, and it did actually obstruct the light of the vegetable garden. And whatever you guys choose to decide, as far as an exemption, that it be at their cost, and it's mutually agreed upon that it's aesthetically pleasing. And there also has been some unclarity about the boundaries of the fence. So again, that needs to be addressed. And that's pretty much it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions of the deputant? Thank you. Ralph, please.
Yeah, it's Ralph Posthumous.
Whenever you're ready, sir, 5 minutes.
Sure. So we've requested an exemption on part of our backyard fence between us and our neighbors. The exemption height that we're looking for is 2.5 meters. The reason that we're asking for this exemption is we've lived in our house for 27 years. They've moved in 4 years ago. Until that point, we lived a very peaceful existence. They have 3 dogs. One of their dogs has the ability to jump to the top of the fence that exists at this point in time. We had a lattice on the top part of the fence. Their dogs, this specific dog has been ripping down that lattice. We've had to replace it and repair it over time. And at our cost, they haven't done anything to stop that dog from tearing down the fence. The dog also throws itself against the fence. Whenever it hears anything on our side, it actually shakes the whole fence. The fence is falling over. It does need to be repaired and replaced because it's no longer safe. So when we want to replace it, we want to make sure that we get it to the proper height. The other thing was when they dog jumps against the fence, it actually startles anyone on our side because we can't see the dog. It jumps against the fence and it scares everyone. The reason that we're asking for the fence to be above the normal height, that is the standard, is they have a deck that's 3 to 4 feet above grade. And when they sit on that deck, they can actually look into our backyard. We have a pool, and we haven't been able to use that pool as much as we have in the past because they sit on the deck and watch us when we're in our pool. The 2 neighbors, they stand on that deck and they heckle my family. They take video cameras while they're heckling my family. On top of that, the dog actually uses the deck to look into our backyard to determine when we're there so that I can decide at that point that it's going to jump against the fence and scare us. We need a new fence because it's falling apart, and we're asking for it to be at a higher level because we've got no privacy, and we want to have more privacy than we have right now, and we want to control that dog. I also included a letter in the presentation package. We do have a letter of support from the police officer, Paul Rowe, so that's been included also. That's my presentation. Any questions?
Thank you. Any questions of the deputant? Councillor Ainsley.
Yep. Mr. Posthumous, so some of the concerns your neighbors had, whatever the fence is done, they've said that, I guess you're painting on your side and it's dripping through onto your side.
Sure.
If this is allowed, you'll be a little more cognizant about that?
Sure.
And there's also a concern, I guess they have a garden in the backyard, so you are doing a lattice on the top of the fence?
Well, we're looking at lattice, or because of the way the dog's been ripping down the fence, we may have to change that. The dogs, if it's going to rip down the lattice, it's not really worth putting lattice up. So we're probably looking for a solid fence. But their garden, this is on the western side, right? The northern side, actually. So they say it's blocking the sunlight. I don't know based on the way the sun falls how that would be the case.
Okay, and so it's you that's going to be constructing the new fence, I assume?
If that's what's required to make this happen, I'm okay with that.
And you'll pay attention to the property line?
The fence is currently 6 inches into my property. It was built that way.
Okay.
The property line is actually further back.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Questions of staff? Okay. Speakers? Councillor Ainsley.
Yep. I'm going to move recommendation number 2 to grant the application.
Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Let's see. SC 12. SC 12.3, tied item for 10 o'clock. Various properties, city-initiated technical amendments to various former City of Scarborough zoning bylaws final report. We do not have speakers. Okay. Questions of staff? Move staff recommendations. All those in favor? Opposed, carried. Hold on, we're getting there. No problem. 1210, SC 12.10, Golden Mile Secondary Plan Study, Proposal Reports. We do have a few speakers. Cynthia Dumont, Golden Mile Impact Network Steering Committee. Ma'am, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you again for the opportunity to address the Scarborough Community Council today regarding the Golden Mile Secondary Plan Study. My name is Cynthia Dumont, and I'm the Executive Director of the West Scarborough Neighborhood Community Center. I'm here representing the Golden Mile Impact Network, a steering committee, which consists of 7 local nonprofit agencies, including the Warden Woods Community Center, West Scarborough Community Center, Working Women Community Center, and the Victoria Park Hub, Labor Education Center, Wood Green Community Services, Youth Link, and Cross Cultural Services. Our agencies collectively serve residents who live in and around the Golden Mile area. And we do have some residents with us here that might want to wave and say hi. And some agencies. Okay, just wave. Okay, our group, we got together in the fall of 2018, and we include over 20 nonprofit organizations serving the Golden Mile greater area, which includes some of the other areas I'll talk about in a minute. We believe that the LRT and resulting upcoming development has the potential to positively impact the lives of existing residents, but for that to happen, all voices in the community need to be heard. We came together to accomplish 2 things. One was to support nonprofit agencies to participate in the planned changes in the Golden Mile, and also to support residents in the area, in particular those of low income, to have a say in the planned changes in this area. We are doing this through community engagement process focused on area nonprofits and local residents facing barriers such as language and income. Throughout 2020, we will continue to organize community gatherings, and in 2021, we will develop a report on our findings. We are looking to publish a report as a community benefits framework, so that can help us move forward. Today, we want to share with you some of the priorities and feedback that we've heard so far. So through open houses, forums, surveys, focus groups, and other engagement sessions hosted since the fall of 2018, we have engaged over 450 residents and 25 community agencies currently serving residents in the neighborhoods of Victoria Village, O'Connor, Iron View, Eglinton, Kennedy Park. From our engagement, the following 3 key needs have emerged: access to affordable housing, economic opportunities, and community spaces and services. Securing affordable housing is a major challenge for residents in the area, as it is with everyone in the whole city. Our current working definition of affordable housing is that decent and dignified housing is considered affordable when it is less than 30% of net income. We believe that 25% of all new units should be permanently set aside as affordable. Throughout our conversations with community, we hear again and again about the need to build an inclusive and affordable community that represents a mix of incomes. Larger units will ensure that diverse families have a place in the neighborhood and seniors who want to remain in the neighborhood have units that are designed with accessibility in mind. Number 2 is local economic opportunities. Many residents in the community are unemployed or underemployed. They want to see opportunities for good local jobs. The redevelopment of the area stands to offer opportunities like local employment programs that support residents to work in new retail and other businesses, as well as work in the construction trades as each new development is built. Many local aspiring entrepreneurs are also interested to grow their small businesses. These type of activities can be supported in local and public-private spaces, such as a community market or a new local park. The third area is community spaces and services. Community members want to make sure that the existing services they have in the area continue to support them, such as a local library, community hub, and employment services. We also hear from local nonprofits that these services be able to remain in the community, and it will be important for commercial rents to be affordable, as the vast majority of nonprofits do not currently own their own space. Opportunities for nonprofits to own their own space or secure long-term tenancies are needed. Knowing that tens of thousands of new residents will also be living in the area means that local services will need to be expanded. Residents value an approach of services first, so that all services make a complete community, from daycares to schools.
If you can wrap it up, we'll greatly appreciate it.
I'm almost done. To community services are in place before residents move in. Last paragraph. Trusted nonprofit agencies can help to play a role in bridging the interests and needs of existing residents with other stakeholders. We hope to continue to work with the city and others to be able to build a shared vision for the future of the area. Let's get it right this time. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any questions of the deputant? Councillor Thompson?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, through you to Ms. Dumont. So far, the group, the Golden Mile Impact Network, has been working as part of the process, and you feel quite included as in terms of the work that's being done, appropriate information that is being made available to your group and organization?
Yes, we do. We've been working with the city. We want to support the plan, and we just want to ensure that residents and community agencies are involved as we go forward. We know it's a very long-term project, and there's a number of development applications, but we want to be consulted and make sure residents and agencies are included. But yes, we're not dissatisfied with that. So thank you.
Right. The attachment 3 as part of the report speaks to a lot of the issues that you've raised here this morning, and it, having read it only this morning at 2:30, I concluded it, because we only got it really late, and so on. I'm not sure if you read right through it. I wanted just to ask, are you aware that much of what you're talking about is actually included as part of the secondary plan document and information to address those very points that you've raised?
Yes, we are aware of that. We're not here. We're not here to be controversial. We just want to make sure that, and we have met with you, and thank you very much for that. That all the council knows and all the city staff know that we have a very strong group, very strong organizations and resident engagement. We just want going forward to make sure, because as we all know in the past, sometimes developments have happened and then things come much later. So we just want to make sure, let's get it all right this time. It's a great opportunity. It is a golden opportunity. Sorry for the pun. You grew up in the area. I grew up in the area.
Yes.
We want it to be a great place for people.
Right. Just let me make this really super clear. You're not being difficult at all. The group's not being difficult. It has been a real privilege to have everyone who has a vested interest to be at the table, to be able to comment, because as you pointed out, we have to get this right. And so I guess my final question to you, as part of the process that's been ongoing, and you've identified the fact that the impact group has been very well received and getting all the information and so on, do you see going forward do you have any concerns that this will not continue?
I don't think we have any concerns at this point. We just want to make sure that people that know as a group we're involved. And we do have some small funding from the United Way to help us do some of the resident engagement. So and the City of Toronto has been very involved. Obviously, we've been involved in a number of initiatives. So we just want to make sure everyone's aware of that, and we continue to keep working that way.
Thank you very much. No more questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Further questions, Councillor McKelvey?
Thank you for your deputation. You mentioned a percentage of housing that your group would like to see as affordable. What was that number?
25%.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions of the deputy? No. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Laura Higgins, Golden Mile and Neighborhoods Community Association. Laura? Laura Higgins?
She may not be here. She's one of my residents, and I think she had some issues getting here.
Okay. Next speaker is Maggie Bassani. Good morning. You got 5 minutes.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm here on behalf of two clients, CP Rate Properties Limited, also known as Choice, which is the owner of the property known as the Golden Mile Mall just north of Eglinton between Victoria Park and Pharmacy. As well, I'm here on behalf of Starlight Developments that owns a property immediately north of that property, which is the low-rise apartment buildings along Rannoch and Creighton Drive. And so based on our preliminary review of the draft secondary plan as well as the draft transportation master plan, we do have some serious concerns with the proposed implementation and the development phasing within the secondary plan area. So although I have a number of concerns, I am going to keep my submissions to kind of three main points today. First, quite simply and most respectfully, the proposed implementation and the development phasing just will not work. The proposed phasing only allows for 35% of the development to proceed with the introduction of the Eglinton LRT. The remaining 65% is actually withheld until certain transportation works or improvements are made. So, for example, the construction of the new proposed east-west road called Golden Mile Boulevard and the realignment of Creighton Drive is one of the requirements before an additional 25% of development can proceed. And the requirement for these improvements before additional development can proceed would simply delay the introduction and the achievement of all the great objectives, the transit supportive development, the community benefits, the parks, affordable housing that could be introduced in the area much sooner. Because what could happen is, and what likely will happen, we believe, is that one landowner can hold up the development for all others within the area. So, for example, again, Golden Mile runs from Victoria Park, Golden Mile Boulevard, runs from Victoria Park in the east all the way to Birchmount to the west. It runs across the entire secondary plan area. And Bell Canada is a great example of an owner who owns a site at the southeast corner of Pharmacy in Ashtonby. And the proposed Golden Mile Boulevard would cut through that Bell Canada site. And as we know, Bell Canada is not a developer. They have probably millions of dollars worth of infrastructure on that site. So it is highly, highly unlikely that that site will ever be redeveloped and that portion of Golden Mile Boulevard could ever be realized. So if the entire Golden Mile Boulevard cannot be delivered, the way that the draft documents provided so far says that additional density just simply cannot be unlocked. So that's highly problematic, and it's only just one example of why the proposed implementation and the phasing just will not work. Ideally, there needs to be an alternate solution here, which allows that blocks, individual blocks, however they may be delineated, would deliver that required infrastructure on a block-by-block basis so that one owner isn't reliant on another owner way further down within the secondary plan area before they can proceed to development and hopefully provide all those great community benefits. That's one of the objectives for the secondary plan area. And then secondly, the proposed implementation requires an EA study for those transportation improvements. And based on the draft TMP, they're suggesting that it could take 3 years to complete. However, there's no certainty that EA will ever even proceed. There's no funding allocated. And again, it further adds to the potential delay for the introduction and achievement of all those great community benefits and the transit supportive intensification for this community. So we don't agree that an EA process is the appropriate one to allow for these pieces of infrastructure to be introduced. There are much more appropriate mechanisms that we can use to provide for roads, as an example, through draft plans of subdivision as one potential means. Much faster and less expensive for the city to get these improvements. And third, based on our review of the draft TMP as well, and you know, quite frankly, contrary to the opinions of staff, the proposed density caps, based on indicated in the draft secondary plan, you know, in our opinion, just simply is not based on the transportation capacity analyses that we've looked at. And this, you know, we've looked at this with the help of our transportation consultant who has agreed with us. So we think that there is a fundamental flaw in the establishment of these densities, that these low density caps, for example, 3.2 FSI on the Choice property and 2.5 FSI on the Starlight property, these are not appropriate responses to the significant transit investment along Eglinton that's made. So in conclusion, we don't think that at this time it's appropriate to either endorse the draft TMP or the draft secondary plan for further consultation.
Thank you. Ms. Bassani, any questions of the deputant? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So the concern you have with respect to the development, the block by block, as you pointed out, development in Bell Canada, you're right, is a very, well, difficult organization to deal with at the best of time, whether or not it's with your home or particularly on land. We've had that experience. You're saying to us that based on what we have here in terms of this draft amendment, it would slow down, it would delay the process of other entities to proceed if we were to approve this draft document today. Is that correct?
That's correct. Significantly delay or potentially even halt the full realization of the development potential within this area altogether. Because right now, as it's drafted, only 35% of the development can proceed. Nothing else until a number of other improvements are made, and that Golden Mile Boulevard is a perfect example of one piece of infrastructure that can be held up by one single owner and would prevent altogether further development and intensification.
So I imagine you have basically on behalf of both your clients, seen the document, had a chance to review it. Have you had a chance to express those concerns to staff prior to today?
There's been a number of, I think, discussions between our clients, and,
Yes.
and it's been an ongoing dialogue. Our client has been involved in the secondary process for many, many years from the very outset.
Yes.
So we have been very much participating in that process with staff and have expressed a number of concerns to date.
Right. So Ms. Dumont came and spoke earlier, and she is very concerned and very supportive of the process, but concerned to ensure that the three specific things that she raised was around affordable housing, the economic opportunity and benefits and so on, and then community space and amenities. You're saying to us today that were we to simply proceed with respect to this document, that in essence could delay the very points and concerns that she has around redevelopment of this entire stretch of Eglinton Avenue. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct, sir. It's through the redevelopment process by landowners that the city can get community centers, new parks,
Yes.
Economic hubs or community facilities, affordable housing. All those community benefits would either be delayed or halted altogether if this current plan, both the draft secondary plan and the draft TMP, is endorsed today, in our opinion.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask staff some questions on this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any further questions of the deputant? Nope, seeing none. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Sir, have you registered?
I think my office was trying to get something in late because we weren't sure if we were given an opportunity to speak. Bless you. We were here for another item that went a little more quickly, so I was going to address it then. I'm here on
Hold on,
behalf
sir.
of Kingset.
Yeah.
Sir, we'll afford you the opportunity to speak, but please, when you're done, don't forget to register.
I will, for
All
sure.
right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Got 5 minutes.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of Community Council. My name is Adam Brown, and I'm here on behalf of Kingset Capital. And they're the owners of the Eglinton Square property. And I support what the speaker before me just said about the report before you, but I'll give you a little bit of a view from 10,000 feet, so to speak, of our concern. And our concern is this. I think that the Golden Mile Secondary Plan is extremely important for a number of reasons. I think this is probably one of the most exciting new areas that can be developed in the City of Toronto, given the transit investment that's been made on the LRT, given proximity to the DVP, and given the fact that you have large parcels of land that are ripe for redevelopment to ensure that all of those community benefits that were spoken about, including affordable housing, community centers, parks, and all sorts of other important benefits for the area can be achieved. But what's really important in order to achieve those benefits is a realistic set of guidelines and principles. And I'll speak about two. And I was around back in 2000 to 2006 when the City of Toronto passed an official plan that took out density caps. And they did it because they wanted to provide flexibility for development to look at design parameters and guidelines, which have been included in a lot of the policies that city staff have put forward. And they've done a great job in trying to even improve upon the guidelines and policies that are being brought forward. But having density caps that don't create an incentive for commercial property owners to tear down those commercial properties and redevelop will mean that your development won't be achieved. Developing on our site at a density of 3 times density, and let me give you perspective. I've done single-family homes in the last 30 years that have, 1.5 to 2.5 times density. So a 3 times density cap on a site at Eglinton where you have a commercial plaza will mean that those plazas will not change and you will not get a mixed-use development coming forward. It's just a practical reality of the economics of development. So we have to look at that practical reality and say, let's achieve densities that we know will ensure that all the great benefits that the city wants to see happen in the area, and it's important for the area. And the second comment is the transportation comment that was just mentioned to you. And I think you need to carefully look at the recommendations, because today isn't the public hearing where you've given notice to everyone to come out and speak about it. But if you look at recommendation 4, while the other recommendations might be seen as saying, okay, we're bringing this report forward to go to a public hearing, recommendation 4 says that council endorse the draft Golden Mile Transportation Master Plan, that you endorse this master plan. And we say to you, if the master plan is endorsed, you almost guarantee, looking at the Bell example alone, that you can't achieve the transportation improvements. There is a very small likelihood that those transportation improvements in and of themselves can be achieved based on all the landowners that would have to come together and agree. So Bell alone is one great example of the fact that you just won't be able to achieve these transportation improvements. I would say pause that. Do not adopt that recommendation and allow the transportation consultants who are working for the different developers to work with your staff to come up with alternative transportation solutions that make sure this Golden Mile Secondary Plan vision can be achieved. It's an important vision for the City of Toronto. It's an important vision for the City of Scarborough, and we would ask that you keep that in mind, those density caps and the transportation improvements. They have to be realistic in order for development to come to the area. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of Community Council.
Thank you. Any questions of the deputant? Councilor Thompson.
Thank you very much. Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Mr. Brown. Mr. Brown, thank you very much for your presentation here today. We are actually being asked to endorse and essentially the framework. In doing so, it is your view that we would be restricting the opportunity for the development to actually take place in the form that is desirable, for example, in the comments that Mrs. Dupont had made this morning?
Absolutely. I'll be definitive. It won't happen. That development won't happen if those conditions are imposed.
Right. And so the best way then for us to deal with this would be not to endorse, because in fact, so staff is asking to endorse, but to go back to have consultation.
Absolutely.
Right. So we could have the consultation and not necessarily endorse the framework today.
Yes.
in order to allow for the concerns that industry and other members of the public may have to be discussed with staff to come back with a framework that this community council can endorse and then send on to council that would be much more in line with respect to the objective, the goal, and the intention of the community at large, and clearly the landowners.
Yes, and I'm confident. The city has excellent transportation engineers who can work with the transportation engineers from the private sector. They always seem to come up with a good solution. I've never seen the city transportation engineers working with outside engineers not come up with a good solution. So there has to be alternatives looked at that are practical and realistic.
And are you aware whether or not, as part of the process this far, that the, as you pointed out, discussion and conversation between external and internal and city professionals and so on, has those discussions taken place? And I ask you this question because if they have, that would mean the staff are satisfied, albeit that the outside external groups may not be. But are you aware that those discussions have taken place?
I think there's been discussions and reviews, but I don't think to the detail that would be required to look at now the impediments. And in fact, our traffic consultants are the same. They are working on responses so that they can, again, have that iterative back and forth with city staff. So not with respect to these conditions that have been imposed, I think there needs to be further discussion.
So again, you're telling us today that if we were to endorse and adopt what is being asked of staff, that it is your professional opinion that what is desirous of the community at large cannot be met, because as the speaker before you had talked about, the 35% and the other areas where we don't have control in terms of other landowners who may not wish to accelerate or advance the process could in fact delay this for an indeterminate amount of time, which would be counterintuitive and counterproductive for the interests of the community.
If, very definitively, if a 35% density cap was the density that we were to be able to proceed with on my client's site, I guarantee you my client would not have any interest in developing the site, and they would simply move forward as is, status quo. We would not develop the site at 35% of the densities proposed. Not a chance. Wouldn't happen.
So we're spending almost $5 billion to extend the Eglinton crosstown 19 kilometers and so on, with the hope and anticipation and the expectation that growth and development would take place. Yet part of our policy would actually prevent that from happening based on what is in front of us today?
Absolutely. And I think, I don't represent the other property owners,
Sure.
but I see Maggie nodding as well. I don't think one of the property owners that I'm aware of, because we've been having open discussions amongst ourselves and they're here, they would not develop the site at those densities. They would simply maintain the status quo. They would not redevelop their lands. And we are talking about major landowners in the Eglinton Golden Mile Strip.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to, I guess, to continue on that line of questioning from my colleague. Understanding respectfully, there is a very delicate balance that happens with our planners, with owners, in trying to come up with where that middle ground is, because ultimately we want to have what's best for the city, recognizing that the developers and the owners do have to build that. So, you have stated that, with what we have forward, nothing's going to be moving forward with regard to your clients. So, and on the density caps, does this, you suggested that there would be no density caps, or if there were no density caps, we would get development happening a lot quicker. Was that correct?
So I said a couple of things. I'm going back to 2000 when the density caps were taken out of the official plan. And it was something that was done to both incentivize development to happen. I've been in the business long enough that I saw when the downturn, hit us, and there was everything done to try and open up zoning and open up official plan provisions to focus not on densities, but on good design and everything else. And you still evaluate transportation. So the ultimate was to remove the density caps, and they were removed citywide, approved finally and endorsed in 2006. Mm-hmm. But let me stop for a minute. I understand and I get it in terms of the city proposing density caps. I understand why they're coming back into play, and I understand why they're being imposed. However, from our transportation consultant standpoint, from the engineers who do the review, the density caps, in our estimation, are too low. Number two, if you establish density caps in the 3 times range, from a practical standpoint, it's not something that landowners who have an existing commercial asset are going to say, great, we're going to redevelop to get only that much more density on the site. There is an economic reality to it which comes into play in terms of achieving these densities. And you see it around the city. I'll say to you, in low-density areas, without any of the transit improvements that you have coming to this area, you have densities of 2 times the area of the lots, and I'm not exaggerating, on single-family homes. So to say 3 times for this area, in our estimation, it's extremely low.
So with regard, now, again, I know these discussions have taken place over the last number of years. Aside from just removing all density caps, and I think the concern, and I think these questions will be asked of staff next, is there's a certain capacity for that whole area. We got an LRT that's there, and it can only hold so many people. That if we take the density caps off, you're just going to build till your heart's content, technically, and you'll get to a point where it actually impacts transportation in the area. And there's, I mean, you may agree or disagree on the transportation studies, but ultimately there's a capacity for that LRT on that section of the city. And we can, if we go over that, it's going to hurt everybody. And so is there, I mean, is that hence why you potentially take the density caps off, but is there a number, and I'm not suggesting a number, but when you're looking at the kind of density that your group would maybe need for that, and it could be different with other groups, is there that opportunity to have those discussions?
Yes.
On the KingSet side, as an example, you say 3, the density of 3, it ain't going to happen. Is there an opportunity to say, well, is it 3.5, is it 4.5, whatever the number is, to be able, because I mean, ultimately, I think, as we've heard from the community, this is an opportunity for us to move forward. But we don't want to be sitting on it for 20 or 30 years. If we're going to do it, we got to do it, and we have to do it right.
The answer is absolutely yes. I said in my other comment, I understand why you want to impose caps. And so is there a number that will ensure that different developers can achieve and proceed with those developments and achieve all the goals you want to achieve for the area? Absolutely. I'm not saying an unlimited density.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further questions? No? Thank you, sir. All right. Questions of staff? Councillor McKelvin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What is the proposed percentage affordable right now in the proposal? 20%. And then what are the next steps? Oh, okay, sorry, he answered for you, so, okay, go ahead. I thought you were wanting to answer the question for them.
We have a large team of staff interdivisional working on this project. That was also prepared by the large private consultant team who worked on this project as well. And so we'll be directing the questions to those.
Just hold on, folks. We have a request by a new person to speak. So I'll stop you there and invite Laura Hammond, I believe it is, to come down and make a presentation. That be okay with everybody? Okay. Laura?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for
Laura,
giving
you
me
have
the
5
opportunity to
minutes whenever.
speak. Yep. So my name is Laura Hammond. I'm with the Birchmount.
Hold on a second. Is there any other people in the audience that wants to make a presentation? If so, please come down, because after Laura, I will not be entertaining anymore. Is there anybody else? All right, Laura, you got 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. So I'm with the Birchmount Community Action Council. We're a tenant association located at 1021 Birchmount Road. That's near Birchmount, Eglinton, just on the outskirts, the east side of this whole Golden Mile redevelopment project. My main 3 points, I'm going to be quite brief, are to what I heard this morning and to what we've been working on with the inclusive project with United Way and Working Women, the Inclusive Local Economy Project. We are very concerned on how this CBA would be able to roll out. And from what I heard today in regards to some of the questions that the developers have, we just want to ensure that as residents, we're at the table and that it's very clear that for us, speaking on the Birchmount Community Action Council, we are mainly concerned with equity-seeking groups such as racialized women and youth being able to have jobs and being able to afford some of the housing that's going to be in their community. So with that being said, we're looking at what type of trainings could be provided in advance so that when these jobs open up, I read in the notes that there is about 19,000 jobs that are going to be created. So our question is, we'd like to be at the table to say how much of those 19,000 jobs are going to be for local residents in the community. How do we ensure that these CBAs that are going to be created are tangible, impactful, and are able to actually be implied, and being able to actually roll out as agreed to. In going to the TCBN, Toronto Community Benefits Network's annual general meeting, I learned that a lot of times there's a lot of lip service, things look good on paper, and I'm no expert, but how do we ensure that these promises, if changes are made to the draft, are actually going to be kept? So being as though there's a lot of work being done, we have organizations advocating on our behalf. My question and recommendation is to ensure that these CBAs are actually tangible and that there's clear markers. Of the 19,000, what percentage of these employment opportunities are going to be for local residents? What type of jobs will it afford them to be able to own? Not just rent, but have affordable ownership, so there's some type of legacy building and poverty reduction that's actually happening in the community. So just ensuring that we are able to, 1, be at the table, 2, have tangible agreements, 3, be able to be prepared and have the training in advance so that when the jobs open up, we can actually apply for them. Okay, thank you for your time. And sorry, I actually have another resident who couldn't be here today. Her name is Faye Stanley. Let's see here. Yeah, if you can come. She's from Ward 21, Victoria Village, and she wrote a statement just talking about what her goals are. She's a longtime resident of the community who has lived in Palmer Court for, I believe, over 30 years. Yep. So technology is helping me today because I didn't print it out. So on behalf of Faye Stanley, she writes, I would like to thank members of the Standing Committee for this opportunity to share my thoughts on the Golden Mile redevelopment. As a 30-year-plus resident in the area with several children who have grown up here and have become professionals in the various fields, including technology and management consulting, I see an incredible opportunity for change and progress in our area. Currently, the world is in a technological transformation. Approximately 90% of all new jobs will involve computers. Gone are the days where you could attend a short typing course at the Community Learning Center and get a job as a data entry clerk. Entry-level computer jobs are now demanding that employees understand database structure, data usage, and vast array of far more interconnected technology demands. As a result of this reality, I believe that an innovation center dedicated in advancing progressive educational and bridging programs will attract the top private sector companies through competitive economic incentives, tax subsidies, and real estate. So she believes that it's essential and
10
practical.
seconds to wrap up, please.
Yep, and forward thinking. So it just in her dream of an innovation center, when we talk about the CBAs and spaces being created, is something that she would like to recommend. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Any questions of the deputant? Okay, thank you very much. Let's return to questions of staff. Councilor McKelvey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my question was, what was the percentage of affordable housing that was proposed through the Golden Mile Secondary Plan?
many of the sites in this Golden Mile area are large sites. So the official plan already requires developments on these large sites to provide 20% affordable housing. So that's a given today, it's been given since 2006. So we are using that as the base for the secondary plan, but we are also reinforcing the policies for access to affordable housing, access to a range of unit sizes and types of development. So that's how we're approaching affordable housing, along with the city's citywide approach to inclusionary zoning, which has not been finalized, but we are still working on that as a citywide. And if there's anything else to add, I will direct the questions to Emily Caldwell, senior planner on this project.
Good. And then there was comment about the community benefit agreement. What is the status of this and how will it be rolled out? Is it, an ongoing discussion, and each time a new building comes in, the discussion happens about what the CBA agreement will be, or are you looking to develop a CBA for the entire area?
Through the chair, a community benefits agreement is something that's a little more relatively new in the development industry. It is really a mechanism that is used later in the process as opposed to earlier in the process. I would suggest that the planning legislation doesn't particularly speak to it, but as a matter that can be negotiated between the city and a developer later in the rezoning process. It's a matter that has been secured, and it is a mechanism that we will seek to use and secure the broader community benefits, as has been identified by many community groups in the area. But again, that's at the later stages at a rezoning, finalization of rezoning application.
So going forward, given that this is a very long-term plan and vision, as the city updates policies on both affordable housing and community benefits agreements, there is the ability to, as each building is rolled out, to incorporate that new best practice going forward. So nothing that's being decided on either of those two today is set in stone in the future.
To the chair, that's correct. At the rezoning stage for these projects, each application as it comes in, we will be able to apply city standards that exist at that time. But it's important that even in these official plan amendment applications, that we secure commitments to achieve those things. And so it's not just enough to say that we will do these things. These commitments really must be secured.
And then there was several concerns raised by the business community about phasing and about density. I see that one of the recommendations is to have a business forum. So are those conversations going to continue? And how did these next steps in discussions that you're looking to have with external stakeholders, how are they going to inform the plan going forward? Like how are you going to take this feedback that you're hearing today and in these external workshops and incorporate it?
I'm going to redirect that question to the team because we did have a team that involved economic development, and many of those matters came out as a result of those discussions.
Thank you. Is this on? Through you, Mr. Chair. So the intention is to have additional workshop meetings between now and when the final report will be brought forward, and that feedback will be incorporated into the final report.
So what are we approving today, just so it's crystal clear, because we have a lot of people that have come out to speak, very passionately raised some very important concerns. What are we approving today through these recommendations?
Through the chair, what the community council has reported today is what we call a proposal report. It is not asking for council to approve. It's not asking for endorsement of anything other than what we have in recommendation number 4. So the framework, the plan, the policy, the draft policies in this plan are here so that community council can review it, so that the public can review it, so that we can go out and do consultation and receive comments from the broader community. And with that, we will come back with a better product to a public meeting where, again, debate will happen, and that's where we will be seeking community council and council's approval of the product. So what you have before you today is nothing for approval, just releasing information for further consultation. Although, as has been indicated, a recommendation for you were endorse the transportation master plan. That is there to assist in moving transportation matters forward. I understand that if it's a concern in terms of using that word endorse, it simply be received for information.
Thank you. Any further questions of staff? Councilor Thompson, 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Is the transportation master plan in front of us today?
I'm going to direct that question to our team, including our transportation planning manager.
Through the chair, the transportation master plan is part of the consultant study, which is linked in the staff report. So it's part of the entire package.
So the information is part of the package. Is the transportation master plan in front of us today?
Specifically as an attachment, no.
Okay, so we are discussing something that's not in front of us. Would you agree? But I realize it's part of the ancillary information. I understand that. But the plan is not in front of us. So why are we being asked to endorse a plan that's not in front of us?
It's, as I previously mentioned, it's part of the entire consultant packages. As part of the Golden Mile study, there was the transportation work, servicing work, and urban design, and a whole bunch of different initiatives, and it was part of that entire package. And within the staff report, it is embedded in the entire consultant report. The executive summary of the consultant report is part of the attachments, but all the individual reports and links are embedded in the staff report.
But the transportation master plan is not in front of us today. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you. So through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Giuliani, the ask to endorse something that's not in front of us today is a little difficult for me to handle. But if we were to simply ensure and instruct you to continue as part of the process and the professional team that you have, which is an amazing team, by the way, and this is really good work, we're just not there as yet. And I think there is, I think your word was, we need to have more consultation because we can actually have a better product. So can we actually have the better product without the endorsement of a report that's not in front of us today?
Chair, the transportation master plan is included as a link, so the information is there and accessible. So it is in front of us today. However, again, I would suggest that if the word endorsement is something that council uncomfortable, we can use the word receive for information, and that way there's no commitment to anything in that document.
So the objective of this report, though, would be to ensure that consultation takes place between the landowners and the city staff and the professional team of consultant that's been retained to deal with this matter. Is that correct?
That's correct, including the broader community.
Oh, absolutely. It wouldn't happen without them. So if we were to, as you pointed out, receive or just simply to delete recommendation 4, we are still able to discuss this matter in its entirety to ensure that the community, landowners and others and so on will continue discussing this development, this opportunity with you going forward. Would that be correct?
Through the chair, that would be correct.
What's the difference between a landowner and a business owner?
Through the chair, my interpretation of that is a landowner has an interest in the land and the future of the land. A business owner has a current interest in the operation of a business to generate revenue.
Thank you. I mean, that's very helpful, and because I really wanted to create a distinction, because in recommendation number 3 specifically talks about the business form with tenants and landowners and so on and so forth, meaning that all will be involved with respect to this discussion going forward, including the community. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, just wanted to make that. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I have no further questions, but I'd love to speak.
Any further questions of staff? Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think to Paul, Mr. Giuliani. So this report before us, aside from number 4, which is the potential endorsement, I recognize the concern around that word. This is really like a point-in-time report. We're still in the middle of a process. We're still going to be consulting. There's still opportunities for change. My initial question that I'm not going to answer, because I realize it's probably not appropriate at this point, was, is this plan achievable in its present form? Based on what I heard from some of the deputants, maybe not. Excuse me. So, I wasn't going to ask that, but I just want to clarify, because I think that it's not fair to ask that question at this point, because we're still in a point of time in trying to figure things out. Hopefully, we will get to that point. So is that correct, that we're in a point of time right now in a process that will hopefully get, when we do make that final decision as a community council and full council, that we'll have everybody in front of us endorsing it wholeheartedly?
Through the chair, I would agree that this is a point in time, and there will be more work, and you'll be asked to review and consider a final product in the future. So I will say that considerable amount of work has been put in by private consultants and city staff. So the product you have before you is in very good shape. We're looking for comments that will perhaps make tweaks and improve things, identify any problematic areas, but the product is in substantial good shape.
And I agree with you, it is in substantial, and we've done a lot, you've done a lot of incredible amount of work on this so far, so thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions of staff? Speakers? Councillor Thompson?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I have a motion, and staff would just put it on the screen. And the motion is consistent with respect to the discussion that's been taking place, really just to delete recommendation number 4. We've heard from staff that discussions and so on will continue. I want to thank Mr. Giuliani and the team, actually, because he has been very careful to stress the team. This is good work. There's a lot of good work that's actually being done. Mr. Giuliani has actually indicated that we need further consultation in order to get a better product. So it is my intention, really, to support this process to ensure that we can actually get the better product. Mr. Chair, I'm leery to just simply adapt what's presented to us. And I'll give you a reason specifically why. We had initially endorsed this Golden Mile secondary plan review with simply just a Scarborough lens. And then that changed, actually. It then changed because we then incorporated the west side, and we had some huge issues with that because it was, in fact, not going to come back here in Scarborough. It was going to go to North York, I believe, or simply just be downtown. And we were not going to have an opportunity to comment on what is, in my view, the largest development opportunity in Scarborough that's taking place on our Golden Mile. And so I'm always very cautious as it relates to this because we had to go through a whole process just to get it back to Scarborough, and it was very difficult. So I'm not reticent or willing to just simply allow it to move forward. When I hear our residents come forward and said, look, here are the things that we're looking for. We're looking for affordable housing. We're looking for economic opportunity, economic development. We're looking for inclusion. We're looking for community space. And as I read through this document last night, I completed this document at 2:30 this morning. And it addressed a lot of those things as part of the reports that are here. And I've looked and I asked staff questions around the transportation master plan and some of the issues around mid-blocks and how the alignment and so on. I was very concerned last night when I was reading because I was asking myself the question, how do we get some of those landowners who are naturally difficult to deal with to actually allow for them to deal with a process to allow us to achieve what is the community's objective, what is the business owner's objective, the landowner's objective, the city's objective. And I just don't want to simply leave it in abeyance and just to hang there with this contingency that supposedly, going forward, some business owners may agree with us wanting to have easements or access to their lands for their network and network of transportation and or cycling and other facilities and so on. I think there's a lot more discussion that has to take place. I do believe that we'll get there where we in fact have this better product. At this point, we don't have that better product. And at this point, I don't want to associate my vote to the endorsement of something that I don't believe, quite frankly, is at a point in time where we can say this framework is going to work. I think listening to everybody, the framework doesn't actually work. If we listen to the community and then we hear from the business owners who say, well, look, if you approve this or this is where it's going to go, 20 or 30 years from now, you're not going to have anything that you think you're going to have today. Well, I can't sit in this chair on behalf of the community to accept that because I don't think that the community want to wait 20 or 30 years from now to potentially start something. I believe, based on my discussion with them, that they want to start something now, and that's why they're part of the process, part of the exercise, and they've been there since day one. There's been a lot of meetings, a lot of discussions taking place. Everyone have a vested interest in this issue. So this is extremely important. The Golden Mile has been there from as a young boy. We would go to the Golden Mile, we'll go to whether or not it's on the Eglinton Square and on the north side where we had a restaurant, we had a movie theater, and we had all these things. That was our area, our downtown. I want to make sure that we are proud of it going forward. And because I'm in this chair today, I will not maybe in this chair for next term or what have you, but because I'm in this chair today, I'm taking the actions that I'm taking today to ensure we safeguard the interests of everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Any questions? Thank you, Councillor. Any questions of the motion of the mover? To speak, Councillor Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank Councillor Thompson for moving the motion. I, too, will be supporting that. And it's not to say I'm not supporting of what has happened and all the incredible work that our staff have done over the last number of years when this was started back in 2016. As I mentioned, this is a point in time report that is before us. We're really not making a hard decision on this, and I don't think we are ready to make a hard decision, though we are well into the process. I mean, we are to the point, I think, where we're starting to see what can potentially happen in this area, and recognizing the changes that's going to take place is huge in this city. It's massive for Scarborough, and we need to ensure that we do get this right. I want to make sure that as we make these decisions, that number one, we consult with the community, and there's been a lot of consultation. We heard that from a couple of the organizations, Cynthia Dumont, and I know I've been working closely with Laura Higgins, and unfortunately wasn't here today, to really make sure that the community's voice is in this. Because I think what I am hearing is everyone gets nervous when we're looking at density, and we're looking at building and more buildings and more density coming into communities. Now, that's whether it's a larger secondary plan like this or just on our regular streets. Density is always a concern. So initially, the community was, we don't want the density because it's going to impact our community, it's going to change our community. But I think the communities, in the conversations I've had in this particular area over the last year, recognize that development does need to take place. They recognize that development and change does need to happen, and they want to ensure that development happens and it's positive for the community. And I think the work that has been happening in this report to date suggests that it is a very positive moment to move forward with this particular area of Scarborough. This is going to change the Golden Mile, and I think when the Golden Mile was put here decades ago. It probably had the same kind of conversations when they were looking at doing that redevelopment, how it changed this area of Scarborough, that area of Scarborough. It is going to do that the same. It's going to resurrect this entire community, entire part of the city. And ultimately, as the city is growing, that's a good thing. We need to figure out how we put these 50 to 60, 70,000 people into our community. And we want to create communities that are living and that are thriving, whether affordable housing, we want to ensure parkland, transportation, all of that. And we are getting to that point with this report, and I'm confident we will get to that point in time where we will all sit back and go, this is achievable. We're not going to spend. What I don't want to have happen is do a report and endorse it, and it's going to take 20, 30 years, and maybe not at all, because we need the independent landowners and developers and people who own this property to endorse this and be part of this as well. We need to figure out where that balance is on density. You don't want to go too high, you don't want to go too low, but where is that density that will promote all of these developers saying, we're in on this too, and we'll be able to, with a plan, be able to recognize that in a period of time that makes sense, not 20, 30, 40 years down the road, or not having developers saying, we're not going to be bothering. We need to figure that out. We're not quite there yet. I'm pleased that Councillor Thompson has moved the recommendation number 4. As I said, it's not that I do not support the transportation plan. A little bit more work needs to happen, and I'll be confidently, hopefully at some point in the near future, sitting down and endorsing this entire plan as something positive for Scarborough and the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further speakers? Councillor McKelvey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank Councillor Thompson and Councillor Crawford. I know this is their area for their hard work on this, and it is an important area to everybody in Scarborough. And I grew up in this hood too, so I spent a lot of time there. Just to date myself, my mom worked at the Consumers Distributing. We shopped at Bargain Herald's. I hung out and probably got into more trouble than I should at Q's and T's, and we spent a lot of time shopping in Eglinton Mile. At the Eglinton Square. So I love this neighborhood, and I do want to see that it continues to be somewhere where people can live, work, play, and shop, just like I did growing up. And we do need to do this right, and everybody in Scarborough is counting on this and looking forward to it. And before I was elected, I worked with Renew Scarborough, and we had a lot of different discussions with people, and everybody came out and wanted to be part of the Golden Mile study because they realized how important it is. And we do need to do it right. And just to put perspective on it, on June 30th, 1959, the Queen came to Scarborough and opened the Golden Mile. And at the time, Scarborough was called the city of the future. And I do think that it can be again. And it's plans like Golden Mile that are going to put us back on the map and going to give us that future that we all want for the next generation. So I'm very excited by this proposal and what this will become. And I look forward to visiting it regularly as it unfolds, so that I can have both the happy memories of my past, but then also the big dreams that Scarborough has for its future. So thank you, everybody, for the hard work that you put on this, and in particular, Councillor Thompson and Crawford, whose area it is in, and they represent so well.
Any further speakers? All right. Can we have Councillor Thompson's motion up again, please? All right, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Motion of the amendment. Motion of the amendment? Motion is, we're good? Okay. All right, thank you. Next item is 12.19. Always Stop Control Dale Avenue and Cromwell Road. We have one speaker, and that will be Wayne Grattan. Wayne, are you in the room? Wayne Grattan? Thank you, sir.
Talk to these guys.
Mr. Grattan, are you ready, sir? All right. Go ahead, sir. You got 5 minutes. Can you press the microphone, please? Speak into the mic, sir. Yeah. You ready? Okay, the light should be a red button, maybe?
Good morning and Happy New Year's. With regards to this intersection, there's 3 issues. There's poor sight lines, no sidewalks, and 2 major projects are planned. The safety concerns is it can be very icy in winter. Pedestrians walk on the street, especially during winter when the snowbanks narrow Dale Avenue. Many dog owners in the area walk to the park to the east of Dale Avenue, and kids gather at the park at the eastern part of Dale Avenue. There's a picture here. You'll see the street back in 1966. It was not completed. This was whole open area at that point in time. It has been since developed in a few different stages. Today, you'll see where it's been developed. And I'll give you a better picture in a minute with regards to the road. But the development to the east has an apartment building that I believe has a couple hundred units in it, plus there's the rest is residential houses. So what happens is with regards to the street here, it becomes a cut-through street that will take you from Kingston Road all the way over to Scarborough Golf Club. At the point where the intersection is, which is right here, that is the high point of the street. So if you're coming from the west, what'll happen is you can't see on the eastern side of the intersection. And the same thing happens when you're from the east. You can't see on the west side. So on a day like today, where it's very icy, people have to walk on the streets, and you got cars that are doing approximately the speed limit on the street, I believe, is 40, and they'll do 50 or 60 due to the fact it's a cut-through and they're on a mission. This is the intersection currently today, and you can see there is one stop sign there. So what we're after is to gather stop signs going east and west on Dale. So what'll happen is if you put the stop signs in, it'll allow the drivers to stop and see what's on the other side of the hill. And it'll also give the opportunity to pedestrians when the cars do stop so that they can take action to make sure that they're out of the way of the cars when they come, hopefully. It'll slow the traffic down on Dale Avenue, and hopefully it'll reduce the number of cars that use Dale Avenue as a shortcut from Kingston Road to Scarborough Golf Club. And that's it.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of the deputy? Councillor Ainsley.
Thank you. Mr. Grattan, you've lived in the community for a while.
Yes, it's, 57 years.
Okay, so you're very well aware of some of the issues. There's the development that you mentioned at the green space at the end of Dale. There's going to be increased development. With a lot of your neighbors, I've heard complaints about people that have to walk in the road, in particular in the winter when there's a lot of snow. There's snowbanks on each side, and that's increasing issues as well for residents.
And along with that, if there's cars parked on the road, it narrows it down. And so therefore, really, you only got a passageway of about a car and a half, and you're mixing pedestrians in with that passage of a narrow and a half car.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any further questions of the deputy? Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Questions of staff? Speakers? Councillor Ainsley.
Thank you, Mr.
So I have a motion to move, Mr. Chair. I want to thank Mr. Grattan for coming in on behalf of the community and the area residents to speak about this. I do have a motion. I'd like to authorize an all-way stop control at the intersection of Dale Avenue and Cromwell Road. I've been representing this area. It's a new part of my ward since the last election. Even door knocking, I heard from a lot of residents, pretty much mirroring what Mr. Grattan just said about this intersection's at basically the crest of a hill, and there's sightline issues both from the east and west as you approach it. I hear a lot of complaints from kids about having to walk on this street in the winter. There's no sidewalks, so they're forced to walk on the street. If there's a lot of snow, even when there's oncoming traffic, if there's cars parked on the road, forces kids to stand up on snowbanks while they wait for cars to go along Dale. I've had police on this stretch of Dale to enforce the speed limit. There's been a lot of speeding, so I think putting a stop sign, all-way control stop sign at this intersection will go a long way to enhancing the safety for pedestrians. Thank you.
Any questions of the motion to the mover? Okay. All those in favor of the motion? Sorry, any further speakers? No? All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Carried. SC 1220, compulsory stop control spot in the Hill Road area. Speaker is Miroslav Glavich. Mr. Glavich, you know the rules. You got 5 minutes.
5 minutes? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Just so you know, I'm wearing headphones with this. I'm hard of hearing. This helps me listen. Thank you. I'm listening to any sports game or whatever. My father. Sorry, I can't hearing myself again. My father-in-law lives in the area. He has gotten hit. He's a 94-year-old man, and if you ever get to be 94 years old and get hit by a car, it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt a lot, and takes a lot longer than, let's say, me at 41. I support the motion on all these stop signs. It would be nicer if Botany Hill Road itself at the intersections would have the stops. There's a lot of cars. My father-in-law's neighbors who are like to speed and think it's the 401. We have a lot of problems with people getting hit. Now imagine if your father-in-law got hit or any family members. Botany Hill Road with the other intersections, the drivers on Botany Hill Road themselves don't have the stop signs. If I'm reading the map right, the smallest streets, if there were some extra added stop signs on Botany Hill Road, would be nice, but I still support the motion. I don't want to see my father-in-law getting hit again and yelling at his neighbors. That doesn't work. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions of the deputant? Thank you, Mr. Glavich. Questions of staff? Councillor Ainsley.
Yep. Thank you. I just wanted to ask staff, so in the comment section, it says as a result of operational concerns that these stop signs were enhanced or needed. What were the operational concerns?
Through the chair, the operational concerns are referring to the fact that those intersections were operating in an uncontrolled manner. So prior to these stop signs being recommended, traffic was just approaching the intersections as uncontrolled, and they then have to follow the Traffic Act. The addition of the stop signs clearly defines the right of way between traffic approaching from two different ways, and improves the consistency of what we see in other areas in Scarborough.
Okay, so these were uncontrolled intersections. So is this something that went back to the old city of Scarborough where they just decided not to put stop signs at these intersections? And I ask this because this isn't the first time that this has taken place in my ward, and I know it's happened in other wards in the old city of Scarborough.
Through the chair, my understanding that these are things that have been left over from previous, probably from the former Scarborough, and that as staff come along these, they do look and they identify them, and then they put forward reports such as this one.
Okay, and then around, when you're looking at something like this, the deputy mentioned Botany Hill, for example. It is quite a long street. There's a number of these uncontrolled intersections that are dealt with in this report. Does transportation staff look at accident history in these intersections, or do they engage the Toronto Police Services to look at speeding to determine if, for example, on Botany Hill, as the deputy mentioned, that it might be more appropriate for an all-way stop at these intersections than I'll use Cresswell, for example, where you're just putting a stop sign on one side where people are driving south?
So through the chair, through an operational report like this, we wouldn't necessarily look at the full operation of Botany Hill, conduct a speed and volume study, or any of the always stop control warrants at these intersections. These stop signs are just to more clearly define the right of way between the side streets that intersect with Botany Hill Road. If we request, we could always look into some of those locations.
Okay, so to the general manager, do I need to make a motion, or can you take that under advisement? It's just because I do have a number of these intersections where I have had complaints about speeding, and it's either do something like that, or I have to go and have individual reports done then.
So through the chair, we would have to do a full study and apply the warrant criteria to those intersections where we evaluate always stop control. We could certainly do that, and we can have a discussion after as to which ones we would like to do.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Questions of staff, anybody else? You done? Okay. Speakers?
I'll move the recommendations in the report, and thank staff for their diligence in this.
All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. We do have two items that were new items that were closed. One is from Councillor Ainsley. New business request reopening of item SC 11.8 Scarborough Minor Arterial and Collector Road speed limit reductions as part of Vision Zero Speed Management Strategy. Word all. The purpose of reopening this item is to give members the opportunity to ask further questions of very important safety concerns on our roads and to allow for a broader discussion, the opportunity for members to move recommendation amendments on speed limit reduction. It's recommended that Scarborough Community Council reopen SC 11.8 Scarborough Minor Arterial and Collector Road speed limit reductions as part of Vision Zero Speed Management Strategy. Do I have we need 2/3 to reopen? All those in favor? Carried. We just deal with each one, or just one? Okay. Question, can we have that item up on the screen, please?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, just point of order. You have two ones, right?
Yes.
Is that
I've
the
been
second
advised
one?
by the clerk that I deal with each one individually.
Oh, I see, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, fair enough.
All right. Questions of the mover?
I'd like to have questions of staff.
Okay, questions of staff. Questions of staff.
Yeah. So, am I going?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, great.
Councillor, go ahead.
So thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So through you, Mr. Chair, to the General Manager of Transportation. You have a Vision Zero plan for the city to address the issue around public safety. Is that correct? It's on, but it's not working.
Through the chair, we do in fact have a Vision Zero 2.0 plan that council adopted the updated version of it just this summer in July.
Right, and we had here at the last committee, I think 150 streets that we were reducing speed limits on and so on in the last meeting that we had in the last term.
The plan itself that we approved in July went through a number of arterial and minor, arterial roadway speed limit reductions as part of a speed management strategy, yes.
Right. I saw there was a document that you had. I'm just wondering if you could put it on the screen. It basically showed the it was a three bar that showed sort of the order of, I guess, magnitude or importance with respect to arterial roadways, minor streets, and so on in terms of where collision and impacts are taking place. I wonder if you can put that document on the screen for me, please. Can you explain this?
Absolutely. Through the chair, the purpose of Vision Zero 2.0 was to really focus on a broader set of data as we start to examine where killed and serious injury crashes are happening in the city. We did a comprehensive review by type and by location in the city, and we found that by a long margin, the number of people getting killed and seriously injured in road incidents was happening on arterial roadways. And this chart demonstrates that. In fact, Scarborough is the place where we see the highest percentage of killed and serious injury crashes in the city overall, including the highest amount among school-aged children that are happening on arterial roadways. And one of the reasons why I'm here today, which is kind of unusual, I admit, is because I've been interested in coming out to communities to talk about Vision Zero in the community, because I think it's a critical and important issue. And as you know, with the Scarborough Action Plan, we've been trying to roll out Vision Zero improvements here more quickly, or as quickly as we possibly can, because we see that the need is tremendous. And so what this bar shows is that the killed and serious injury, which is what KSI stands for, per 100 kilometers of roadway in Scarborough is the highest, and it's highest on arterials.
Right. And so the motions that are in front of us at this particular point in time addresses morely local roads. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Right. And so in my ward particularly, I'm focusing on the arterial roadway because this is, as you pointed out, this is where things are critical. It's taking place and affecting lots of our residents. We've just before the holidays, I think I've had 3 people killed in my community on arterial roadway. But my question to you is this: with respect to the motions that are coming forward, how does that affect you, the work that you have as part of Vision Zero plan? Does that actually impact the arterial roadway efforts to address the impact of incidents taking place there?
Through the chair, so I'll let Jacqueline jump in on some of the details because it's her staff that's making those improvements. But I did want to say that there is a significant amount of work to do on Vision Zero, a significant amount. We have and we are being very precise about following the data and where we see people getting hit, killed, and seriously injured. Largely in Scarborough, it's on mid-blocks, at arterials, and at intersections on arterial roadways. And so we are prioritizing those improvements in those locations, both from our speed management strategy, which is just one of many strategies in Vision Zero, as you know, to move forward. So anything that we do that takes our focus away from the arterial roads as a comprehensive speed management strategy is problematic from a worst first perspective. I think that, I know that our speed management strategy is going to ultimately address all roads in the city. We will be looking at local roads comprehensively starting probably at the beginning part of 2021. But our clear focus and emphasis this year is to finish up the arterial roads, which we're nearly done with on the speed management strategy, move along to the mid-block crossings and the intersection geometric safety improvements and other improvements, and then also move on speed reduction on the collectors and minors, and then move to the local.
So just before you turn the mic over to your staff, so even with respect to a motion to address this issue on local roadways, you would not necessarily be going out doing the work as it relates to the request. I mean, in fact, as you were saying, the arterial roadways are the most crucial. Is that correct?
That's correct, and that's the strategy that was endorsed by council in terms of addressing the major arterials first, which we had 250 kilometers of major arterial road speed reduction approved and installed in place by the end of 2019, and we have just received the approval at the end of 2019 from community councils for another 250 kilometers of reductions on minor arterials and collectors, and those we will be proceeding to install throughout 2020. Again, it's a lot of kilometers of roadways throughout your communities, and we want to see those signs get in, and then we will proceed to go to the locals. Even if local speed reductions are approved by community councils now, we would be going forward with the introduction of those in the order in which the strategy was approved by council.
So you would not be doing them?
That's correct.
All right.
We would be doing them, but we would not be doing them before.
Advance of, sorry.
Correct, in
Yeah.
advance of the collector and minor arterial roads. I did want to say, though, if there are speed and safety issues on specific local roads, especially related to schools, we would want to know what the perspective is of the council around that. It probably wouldn't be a blanket speed management reduction in terms of speed limits, but more improvements along those local roads that would help to address the speed and safety issue.
But you want the evidence. It is my last question. Thank you. It is my, well, I still had 4 minutes and 55 seconds left, Mr. Chair. Okay. No, that's fine. I'm fine. Thank you. That's fine. That's fine. No, it's fine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I wanted to thank Ms. Gray for coming downtown, or coming from downtown out to Scarborough to speak about this issue. As you're aware, we had this issue that came to Community Council last month. A bit of a debate that happened on it, and I think this is why it's reopened again. So I just want to reiterate a few things that you do have a strategy. We have a citywide strategy on Vision Zero, as Councillor Thompson was mentioning, and it's rolling out in a particular way based on certain priorities and all of that. And that's going to continue. We have, in fact, sped it up a number of times. We've added more funds, of course, the budget. But there's a process that's critically important that we have to follow. That's correct, as you've mentioned?
Through the chair, that is correct. And the analysis that we did in Vision Zero 2.0 was specifically related to a much more robust set of data to help to prioritize that. So it's not just prioritized based on our own observation, it's prioritized based on data, speed, fatality data, where people are walking, underserved communities, a number of other components that are in that Vision Zero report.
And as
we'd add that the problem of arterial road speed and the impacts on vulnerable road users, pedestrians especially, is worst in Scarborough. So it's the most important to stick to the strategy in this community because we need to see it be effective.
And as you can recognize, a lot of our residents this is one of the number one issues in our constituencies. And they want us to do things as quickly as possible. They want our streets to be as safe as possible. And I think we know of individual streets, individual areas that we want to get going on reducing speeds or whatever that may be. But in doing so, one of the concerns I have, and I guess the question to you would be, when we're making these decisions, whether it's this local community council or other local community councils that deviate or are different from the plan, where we're reducing speeds in certain areas of Scarborough, not other areas of Scarborough, does that impact the overall success of moving forward with an overall plan when we make these decisions outside of the plan that we're at this point doing?
Through the chair, I would say that it does, because the reason why we prioritized it in this way is because our goal is to get to zero killed and serious injuries on our roadways in Toronto. It's a huge task. It requires lots and lots of intervention on the part of both staff and the community, and diligence on the part of the council. And one of the reasons why we are so focused on the order of implementing this is because the place where people are getting hit and killed, including school-aged youth, is on the arterial roads. We've also, I believe, spend about 60% of our Vision Zero budget currently on the school zones. And you're right to say we've accelerated it. We've accelerated, I think, 3 times with a huge emphasis on school zones. So much of the first 2 years that we've rolled out has been on local roads and in school zones. And I don't want to give the impression that we're going to stop doing that work. We are continuing to do that work, but we are prioritizing and accelerating the implementation of the arterials where we know we have the biggest challenge.
So, and as Councillor Thompson mentioned, even if we as a council decided to look at residential roads, move that it's going to be going down to 30 kilometers. That at some point, I'm not saying I support it or not support it. I think it makes sense as part of the bigger plan. But even if we did that and endorsed it, it's not going to be happening outside of your plan. It'll happen when it's supposed to happen in a couple of years, 2-3 years, or whatever that timeline is.
Well, that is correct, but I did want to point out that the plan that we had to start with the arterial road speed limit reductions was to start those speed limit reductions and get the signs up and completed starting in 2020. We completed all the arterials, so now we've accelerated and we're working on the minor and collectors. The goal is to get those done, as Jacqueline mentioned. It's a pretty large number of roads, kilometer-wise, so we're going to work on that, but we're pretty committed to stay focused and get it done. And as soon as we get that done, we'll be moving to the local roads. So the goal is to get them all completed this year. If we can get it done sooner, we will, and get started on the local roads.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to thank you for coming today, and I know I'll also be seeing you tomorrow at Infrastructure and Environment. So for tomorrow's meeting, I had asked for, well, council had asked for a report back on the school zone specifically and what is being done. And so firstly, I'll thank you here for that very thorough report and for clearly pointing out that arterials are our main problem. So that said, what are you doing through this year's budget process and through this year to accelerate your work on the mid-block crossings in Scarborough? I think really there's a lot of frustration from residents in general, right? And so the school zones, it seems painfully slow for them because it's something like 2 per year in our community. And so, you know, I think we need to show that there is work that's being done. So what are you doing and how can we show that to our residents?
Thank you for raising that question because there has been quite a bit of misinformation about the work that's being done on mid-block crossings, signals, and pedestrian crossovers. So in 2019, just within Scarborough alone, 8 new signals were installed and 5 new pedestrian crossovers, PXOs. We have currently 2 new signals in either the planning or the tender process set to be delivered early in 2020, just in Scarborough alone again, and another 6 in the planning or tender process for the PXOs in Scarborough alone. It'll be in early 2020. And so that's part of the picture in terms of installing those devices. And we've changed our warrant process so that they are warranted through our technical review before it comes for you, which is really quite important. In terms of through the budget process, we have staff for our signals and signage and markings groups as part of our proposed 2020 budget to help accelerate the delivery of the signalized crossing locations as well.
And then on that, once a signalized crossing is approved, and we had one approved today, which, you know, Happy New Year, right? We're getting a crossing in Scarborough. How long will that take to install? What is the time frame and the turnaround that you're working with right now?
Right now, the usual turnaround for our traffic management section to get that delivered is about 12 to 18 months. The ones that fall at the beginning of that are the ones that are warranted, so they've come through the process and it hasn't just been a turnover of city staff's recommendation because we prioritize where the problem is most, the solution is most needed to address the problem. We are looking though at what kind of mechanisms through our procurement process, the way that we have rosters of consultants to assist with design and installation, the way that we can accelerate that because we recognize that it's too long. It's too long to get it in from when it's approved. We'll say that it's always going to take, I would say, you'll hardly ever see it within 6 months because of the time it takes to do design and tendering and installation and getting both hydro approvals and the paid duty officers to activate signals. So there are components of the delivery that are going to be a set time frame. There are other components that we can accelerate, and that's what we're looking at.
And then my final question, just to be crystal clear, I know you've had this question asked several times already. If we today move, that streets are moved to 30 kilometers an hour on these local roads, that will be done, but it will not slow down any of the rollout that is happening on the arterials and the collectors that have already been approved. So you're still going to follow the approved order, but it does give assurances to people that this is important and we care about our local roads, we care about our kids in our school zones. So really, there's no impact on the other deliveries.
That's correct. We do support the reductions to 30 kilometers. That's part of our strategy, but we won't be delivering those reductions until after the high priority arterials, minor arterials, and collectors are installed.
Any other questions? I do have some questions myself.
Thank you for coming to Scarborough today. It's very unusual to see you out here. We hope to see you all. I remember you and I had a conversation when I had two students right outside London. I want to thank you for calling me. I'm not sure if you're familiar with another death that happened in 2017 on a local road just behind the school. Are you familiar with that? Which was at Carnegie and also.
Through you, yes, I am indeed.
Are you familiar with how long the community was fighting to get the speed limit reduced down to 30?
I am not familiar with the time. I do know that there had been some significant concerns about the travel, especially around school times, and interest in also having some additional measures like traffic calming, which I believe we move forward.
Are you familiar with your staff recommendations at the time that the community, before the death happened, was asking to reduce the speed, and your staff, they were saying no? Are you familiar with that?
To you, Mr. Chair, I don't remember the timing. I'm sorry, it was about a year ago, but I believe you if you tell me that that the community had been asking for those reductions.
So staff were present, I'm not sure if that was there before that was our appointment, that they met with the community was insisting on 30 kilometers, and your staff was negative and saying to keep it at 40.
Well, and
So the death happened, we reduced it at 30, the speed up to that, thank you, for that, working on community, still asking for it, we can get it down to 30.
To your point, though, I believe that the suite of tools that's necessary to implement at schools where we do have a known speeding and safety issue, we did move forward with. I think that the community had been working for some time, and I think the school had also been working for some time. One of the things we did through Vision Zero was to change the warrants for a lot of these assessments, as well as doing comprehensive improvements at school zones. Those are all still moving forward. That was part of the Vision Zero plan. July.
So everything that was coming after July from the schools, if something was 30, your staff would support it.
We do support it. We do support the speed reductions and the speed management strategy on local roads.
Was that the case in front of that school? I remember correctly? You were
Through the chair, I believe that was in relation to the traffic calming. So the traffic calming was not found to be warranted, and therefore the speed limit reductions along with the traffic calming were not recommended.
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate the fact that we got work to do, Ms. Gray, but we do have a lot of incidents that happen that have resulted in deaths. So is there a way that you can expedite this work? Is there a way that you can come to us and talk and say we want more money so we can avoid deaths like the two girls that you called me, deaths where the mayor came out on Abbotsford and Shepherd, and Shepherd recommended to stay 60, it wasn't my input at 50. Is there a way that we can accelerate that work and give you the tools that you need in order not to arrive there in 2 or 3 years, but to arrive there?
So thank you for that question. I think the critical piece here is to try to address the issues where they are most significant, and that is why we have accelerated the work on the arterial roads. We know that the vast proportion of people who are getting killed and seriously injured are crossing arterials mid-block, and they're also at intersections. And so we have to address those issues first. A comprehensive speed management strategy is the first principle of the Vision Zero plan, and we are working to implement it as quickly as we can. And as I mentioned, we've accelerated some of that work. We'll continue to accelerate that work. We are asking for a number of positions that will be Vision Zero positions in the signals group, in our data group, in our design group, so that we can get these improvements on the street. Because the time frame just takes too long between the time when the council makes the recommendation and approves that for installation. And we all recognize that, and I really believe I have the right team in place now and the right seats to move forward as quickly as we can with installation on these things. I don't require that, but I certainly do require the staff. It would be very helpful.
And my final question, this is regards to something that happened at Abbotsfield and Shepherd in my area. It's just one block east of Pharmacy. There was a woman that was crossing across the street, Jones, who was hit. She was going across to get the TTC bus on the north side. And I called in TTC and the staff and said, can we take a look at these mid-block
bus stops, if they're required, that we address them, if they have a lot of, traffic, that we either put a cross signalized intersection there or not. Has that work been moved forward between yourselves and TTC?
Yes, Chair. We've been actively working on the review of controlled crossings at all TTC stops. That was something that we reported to Infrastructure and Environment Committee to the October meeting as well. There are a number of things there. So changing the warrants when we're doing a review of those locations to have a controlled crossing added to those locations as part of it. As well, TTC is doing stop consolidation so that they're either moving their stop to a place where there is a control or they are supporting the having the stop be existing at locations that are controlled. So there are quite a few facets of that, but we're actively working with TTC on that issue.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have two motions that I would like to move. The first one deals with reducing the speed limit on Galloway Road, which is a collector ward street within my ward. And then I have another motion similar to what I moved at our last community council meeting, reducing speed, asking for the speed limits to be reduced on minor arterial collector roads and additional streets. I want to thank staff for all the work that they've done and continue to do on Vision Zero. I'm fully supportive of Vision Zero. You know, we have to deal with the road deaths, in particular the pedestrian deaths that take place on our road from pedestrians, cyclists, people in vehicles. The chart that was up here earlier around deaths on arterial, collector, and local roads, I think is very relevant to this conversation. And part of the rationale behind this motion is that I have monthly town hall meetings. The town hall meetings, each and every month, the number one complaint I get is around speeding on local roads, in particular around schools. And when I tell residents that one of the concerns, you know, within Vision Zero, we're looking at reducing speed limits around schools. We've introduced photo radar. They want it done faster. They want it done faster. They want it done quicker. I've had people say, and I'll say to people, you know, the focus is on arterial roads right now. We're trying to reduce the deaths on arterial roads. And residents will say to me, Vision Zero, great. Reducing deaths on arterial roads needs to be done. But they're looking at it that we're being reactionary and not being proactive. And when they look at the speed limits around local schools, children in particular, and I'll say, you know, we're going to have the speed limit reduced in a few years. We're focusing on arterial. They're like, Counselor, once again, you're just being reactionary. When somebody gets hit in front of our school, then you're going to be in here, and the media is going to be in here, and you're going to reduce the speed limit. We're not prepared to wait until children get hit by cars in front of our schools as the streets get busier and busier. They want the speed limits reduced around schools now. When I tell them, once again, Vision Zero and budgeting, they're like, you know what, Counselor, maybe you should go to City Hall and increase the budget for Vision Zero if the Transportation Department needs more people and more resources to make it work. We're not prepared to wait. Another example I'll use is that last month, our last meeting on the Scarborough Golf Club Road, where there was a young gentleman hit by a car. We approved a crosswalk there. Residents have been asking for the speed limit to be reduced on Confederation for probably the entire time I've been in office. And I've had a number of studies done. They've all come back negative. Staff say to me, when I raise it, it's like, bring it forward. Well, I bring it forward, and the reports get turned down. Dale Avenue, that we just approved a stop sign today, that I had a resident, Mr. Grattan, a lifelong resident in that community. That's another street. That's on this list where I'm asking for the speed to be reduced. Residents want it reduced. I've asked for it continuously since I've been in office, and it keeps getting turned down. So that's why it's on this list. Residents are frustrated. I've had police, when it came out in the media that this report was turned down last month, I had police in 43 Division contacting me and saying, that's too bad because we need the speed limits reduced around the schools in particular. When the speed limit's at 40 or 50, they have a much easier time enforcing a 30... Sorry, Mr. Chair, I'll stop.
Michael? Yeah, we need you for quorum. I'm actually leaving today. How can you? Well, he was here when you started talking.
That's very mature of them. Take your toys and run home.
We can recess for about 5 minutes in order to get quorum.
coming? Is he upstairs? I don't get my way, I'm gonna pick my toes and go home. Sorry? Yeah. Nobody else? I'll do it. I don't know if I'm gonna get any blowback from my colleagues on that. Hey. Aren't you lucky?
Sorry. If you're comfortable, because we're here till 1:30. If they can install it, then we can pick up where we left off. Otherwise, you have slow steps. Stay here with me. Come back at 1:30 to officially reconvene the meeting and then stay there.
And so it's true then.
Everything that's been decided on now would still go forward to council, but anything the bylaws unfortunately provide for them. I need to be careful what I wish for my husband. Right? I put it out in the universe.
Yeah, oh yeah.
He's more interested. I'll tell you later.
quorum, we can continue. Can I have a motion to extend past lunch, please? Right, carried. Councillor Ainsley, you made your presentation.
I'm done. I think I've
Okay.
had my piece.
Questions of the motion? Councillor Ainsley's motion. All right. No questions of the mover?
No, I had a question. There was something I just wanted to Just give me a second, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so Mr. Chair, sorry, which motion are we actually?
Councillor Ainsley had two motions on. You got any questions of the mover?
Well, I had a question with respect to the Galloway Road when it's actually on this list. Is that the Galloway Road that we're voting on? So this is already on the list though, isn't it? Right, so why are we voting on this? This is already on the list. Through you to Councillor Ainsley.
Councillor Ainsley.
Councillor Ainsley, on the list, you've got Galloway Road between Lawrence Avenue and Gilwood. Is that the same thing that you're moving? Well, I had a question with respect to the Galloway Road when it's actually on this list. Is that the Galloway Road that we're voting on? My motion is. Right, and are you changing the speed limit on all of it?
Sorry. Questions of the mover, right?
Yes, but
Okay, let's
I
stick
need
that.
to have more information because I have a list here that suggests that the speed limit's already being changed on the list. And so with respect,
As I said, Councillor, if you were listening, so they're.
I am actually listening, Councillor Ainsley.
Recommending one.
Mr. Chairman, with great respect, I don't need Councillor Ainsley to suggest if I was listening. The reason I'm asking for clarification. So through you to Councillor Ainsley, I'd like to have clarification with respect to
Thank you,
whether or not this is actually on the list.
So on my point of order, the councillor asked me a question and then immediately turned and started talking with transportation staff, and I answered him.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I listen with my ears, not with my,
Thank you, councillors. Let's be civil to each other.
I'm actually
You wanna-
extremely civil.
Have you finished answering your question?
I am.
Any further questions of the motion? Thank you. I do have a motion myself. I'm requesting that all local roads in my area be, eventually they will be going down to 30. There was some conversation earlier on that if we do hodgepodge here and there, well, if you look at Toronto, the old city of Toronto is at 30. And parts of my area are at 30 and parts of my area are 40. So I'm looking to have my solid area, we have a lot of schools and local roads reduced down to 30. We're going to eventually go there, but I'd like to be on the record that I've asked for it.
Me? Yes, Mr. Chairman, question
Yes,
of
sir.
you. So you are in agreement with respect to the Vision Zero that it's moving to 30 on the local road, is that correct?
Councillor, I have to be responsible to my residents. My residents want action now, and this is what I'm providing for them.
No, I appreciate that. I'm just trying to understand with respect to what you're doing. So you are reaffirming what's already in
I'm
Vision
reaffirming, but there's
Zero.
some roads, I'm not sure if they're going to be going down to 30, so Vision Zero, but I'd like to make sure that all my roads in Ward 22 are going to be go down to 30. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That it's moving to 30 on the local road, is that correct?
Other speakers? Can we put the motions back up, please? All those in favor of Councillor Ainsley's motion?
Recorded vote, please.
Recorded vote. All yeas, Councillor Ainsley, Councillor Giuliani, Councillor McKelvey. Opposed? Councillor Thompson. Carries.
Sorry, I have a second.
Sorry about that. All those in favor of 1, 2, and 3 in this motion?
Recorded.
Recorded, please. Councillor Ainsley, Councillor Karygiannis, Councillor McKelvey. 4, opposed, Councillor Thompson. Thank you. Can I have mine up, please? All those in favor? Thank you. Ayes have it. So you had something you walked on? If you can please speak to it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a walk-on, and to keep it on the screen, I have made one amendment to move it from Q2 to Q4 2020, as Transportation Services have advised that such a study takes about 1 year.
Any questions of the motion? Should I be asking questions of staff? No. Questions of staff? Nope, okay. Any other speakers? Nope. All those in favor? Councillor Ainsley, Councillor Karygiannis, Councillor McKelvey, Councillor Thompson. Any questions of the motion? Yes. You want to read it? Oh, go, sure.
That the Scarborough Community Council pass and declare as a bylaw a confirmatory bill to confirm the legislative proceedings of the Scarborough Community Council acting under delegated authority at meeting 12 on January 8th, 2020.
All those in favor? That the Scarborough Community, passes, sorry, that the Scarborough Community Council pass and declare the bylaws bills 18 to 19 and 21 to 23 prepared for the January 8th, 2020 meeting, 12th of the Community Council. All those in favor? Councillor Ainsley in favor, Councillor Karygiannis, Councillor McKelvey, Councillor Thompson. Thank you, folks. Appreciate you, Councillor Thompson, for coming back for us to finish the meeting.